Imagine this, the one who hurt you the most, the person who tried to break your spirit, control your mind, and silence your light, is suddenly gone. The narcissist is dead. And something strange begins to happen. You're not crying, you're not angry. Instead, something deep inside you starts to shift. It feels like a door you never knew existed just opened. A heavy weight lifts from your chest, and for the first time in years, you can actually breathe. What is this feeling? Is it freedom? Is it peace? Or is it the beginning of your true awakening? They tried to block your path, but their end has become your new beginning. Welcome to the power of the law of return, a spiritual force that may seem cruel but always delivers justice in its own mysterious way. In this video, we're going to uncover what really happens when the narcissist dies and why their death activates something divine within you, the chosen one. And trust me, this isn't just about pain or revenge. It's about your transformation, your power, and your destiny. So stay with me till the very end, because what you're about to hear might explain everything you've ever felt but couldn't put into words. If you've ever felt like something was stolen from you, your voice, your peace, your light, then this message is for you. You are not alone anymore. You're part of a spiritual family now, a tribe of souls who have survived the dark and are stepping into the light. So make sure to like, subscribe, and join our community. Drop a comment below to show you're here. And let's grow together. Your story matters. And today, your awakening begins. When the narcissist dies, something inside you begins to change. For a long time, you were trapped in their world, a world where your feelings didn't matter, your voice was ignored, and your light was slowly dimmed. You may have spent years walking on eggshells, doubting yourself, and trying to please someone who only wanted control. They drained your energy, made you feel small, and fed off your kindness. You were stuck in a silent prison, not with chains, but with fear, confusion, and emotional pain. Then one day, they are gone. At first, it's quiet. Too quiet. You expect to feel peace, maybe even happiness. But what comes instead is something deeper, something unexpected. There is silence, but it's not calm. It feels like something big is moving beneath the surface. It's like your soul is waking up from a long, dark sleep. This silence is not empty. It's full of memories, full of truth, and full of a power you forgot you had. Here's the hook. The truth is, the silence after their death isn't peaceful, because it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's your soul finally stepping into the space they always tried to block. All the strength they buried in you, all the wisdom they feared, all the love they couldn't destroy. It starts to rise. You begin to remember who you were before the pain. And you start to feel who you are now, and someone stronger, wiser, and more awake. You're not just healing, you're transforming. The silence becomes a mirror, showing you everything they tried to erase. You see your power, you hear your own voice, and for the first time you trust it. This is not just a quiet moment, it's a spiritual awakening. The end of their control is the beginning of your true life. For so long, you thought it was just emotional pain, the constant confusion, the gaslighting, the way they made you question your worth. But the truth goes deeper. You weren't just emotionally abused, you were spiritually trapped. Your light, your energy, your purpose, all dimmed under their shadow. Narcissists don't just attack your feelings, they drain your life force. They feed off your goodness, your compassion, your divine essence, and little by little, without even realizing it, you fall into a deep sleep. Not the kind of sleep where you rest, Ben, but the kind where your soul forgets who it is. You stop dreaming, you stop creating, you stop believing you're alive, but you're not really living. Then something happens that shakes the very fabric of your reality. they die. And while the world reacts with shock or sadness, something unexplainable begins inside you. Their physical death becomes a spiritual shift, a portal, a release, a cosmic rearrangement. The energetic cord that bound you to them starts to dissolve. Suddenly the fog lifts. You feel things you haven't felt in years. Your intuition sharpens. Your dreams return. Your soul stirs. You didn't even realize how deeply you were asleep until you began to wake up. This isn't just grief or relief, it's ascension. The dimension where they had control over you is gone. You are no longer stuck in their reality. You're crossing over into your true self, the version of you they tried to bury. And that version is powerful. That version is the chosen one. And now, nothing can stop the awakening that's already begun. The truth that was buried under their projection, their control, their lies. And when it finally emerges, it's so clear, it shakes your soul. You were always the powerful one. They knew it. That's exactly why they tried to crush you. From the very beginning, they saw something in you, something rare, radiant, and divine, a light, a presence, a soul not easily controlled, and that terrified them. You weren't just another source of supply to the narcissist, you were a mirror, one that reflected everything they hated in themselves and everything they could never be. Your strength, your intuition, your compassion, your truth. It was all too much for them. So they tried to break it. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't fragile. You were forged. What looked like weakness was actually sensitivity tuned to spiritual frequency. What they mocked as too emotional was your empathy, a superpower they could never access. And while they were busy building illusions, you were holding on to something real, something eternal, something the universe had written into your very being long before the pain began. And so, the law of return began its silent work. It didn't strike quickly, it didn't roar. It waited, watched, balanced, because universal law doesn't miss, and it doesn't play favorites. What they sowed in cruelty, they reaped in silence. Their lies returned as isolation. Their manipulation returned as exposure. Their control returned as collapse. And you? You rose. This law of return is cruel only to those who believe they are above consequence, to those who build their lives on taking from others, pretending their actions don't echo across time and space. But the law was never cruel to you. It was justice wearing stillness. It was the universe's way of whispering, I saw everything, and I never left you. Because you were always the one, the chosen one, the difference maker in your bloodline, the pattern breaker, the one they underestimated because they thought silence meant surrender. But it didn't. Your silence was survival. It was observation. It was wisdom learning when to move and when to wait. And now you move with power. Now you speak with clarity. Now you live from truth. The narcissists collapse, whether through loss, isolation, sickness, or even death. Wasn't your doing. You didn't wish it. You didn't chase it. But it came, not as a gift, but as confirmation that the energy they tried to destroy in you was never destroyed. It was preserved, protected, and now it's activated. You're not just surviving anymore, you're thriving. And more than that, you're becoming unstoppable, the kind of unstoppable that doesn't need to prove, fight, or shout, the kind that walks into a room and shifts the energy just by being, the kind that sees straight through manipulation and no longer tolerates what once felt normal. The kind that knows peace, values solitude, and trusts inner guidance above all. Because awakening isn't just realizing the truth about them, it's realizing the truth about you, about what you carry, about what you survived, about the fact that if everything they did couldn't break you, then nothing can. You've become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you're clear, not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. And that's the final truth the law of return revealed. You were always powerful. The narcissist didn't give you strength, they revealed it. They brought it to the surface by trying to bury it. And in the end, their efforts failed, because you were never theirs to shape. You were chosen by something greater, chosen to rise, chosen to lead, chosen to remember. So now let that truth settle deep into your spirit. Let it rewrite the story they tried to tell about you. You were never too much. You were never weak. You were never broken beyond repair. You were the light they couldn't dim, the soul they couldn't own, the truth they couldn't rewrite. And now that you've awakened, you walk with purpose. You walk with vision, and most of all, you walk with power that no one can ever take from you again. Because you were always the powerful one, and now you know it. For so long, you lived under the illusion that you were weak, made to believe by the narcissist that your light was too much, your heart too soft, your dreams too naive. But the moment they fell, whether through isolation, loss, or even death, the veil was lifted. The cruel law of return didn't just bring their karma, it revealed your truth. The universe had always seen your value. That's why you were tested. That's why you were targeted. The narcissist didn't fight you because you were powerless. They fought you because they could sense your inner power before you even knew it existed. You weren't just surviving abuse, you were being refined in fire. And now, that fire didn't consume you, it awakened you. It burned away the lies. Who you are, a soul that cannot be owned, silenced, or dimmed. And from this place, nothing and no one can control you again. There's a strange stillness that follows the death of a narcissist. At first, you don't quite know what to feel. The world reacts in predictable ways. Shock, mourning, carefully chosen words that sound like closure. But for you, something much deeper is happening. Something ancient, something spiritual. Their death is not just an end. It's a final page in a script you never chose to be part of. A script written in pain, control, silence, and manipulation. A script that began long before you were even aware of what was happening. From the moment you entered their world, or were born into it, you were given a role. You didn't ask for it, and you certainly didn't deserve it. You were the scapegoat, the peacekeeper, the invisible one, the overgiver. You were taught to dim your light, to keep the peace, to shrink yourself to survive. Every word, every look, every action was part of a pattern, a cycle so old it felt like destiny. But it wasn't. It was a broken narrative passed down through pain, and the narcissist was its lead actor. But here's the miracle. You survived it. Even when you didn't know who you were, even when they made you question your voice, your worth, your sanity, you endured. And now, they're gone. Their presence, their voice, their influence, all silenced. And in that silence, something powerful begins to stir. You realize you're no longer a character in their story. The script has ended, and now you hold the pen. Their death was the final chapter in the old story. The story where you were trapped, defined by wounds you didn't create. A story written by people who never truly saw you. But you see yourself now. And what you see is strength. What you see is wisdom. What you see is a soul that refused to be destroyed. The old story needed to end so a new one could begin. One that's written by you, not dictated by trauma. You're not a victim anymore. You're the author. And authors get to choose what happens next. Authors don't erase the past. They honor it, learn from it, and use it as fuel for a greater purpose. Your pain isn't the main plot anymore. It's the backstory that shaped a powerful lead character, you. And this time you're not writing from fear, you're writing from freedom. This new story is about truth. It's about claiming your identity outside of who they told you you were. It's about discovering what brings you joy without guilt. It's about boundaries that protect, choices that heal, and relationships that don't require you to earn love. It's about reconnecting with the child you were before the script began, the one who laughed without fear, who dreamed without limits, who felt deeply without shame. But here's what makes your new story sacred. You're not just writing it for you, you're writing it for every soul who's still stuck in an old script, for every person who's still living under the weight of someone else's lies. Your healing becomes a map. Your voice becomes a torch. Your journey becomes a testimony that shows others they can walk out of the script too. And yes, grief will still come. You'll grieve the childhood you never had, the apologies you'll never receive, the people you lost along the way. But even grief is different now. It's not hopeless. It's honest. It clears space for what's real to grow. The narcissist's death didn't make you free. You made you free. Their death only confirmed what was already rising in you, that the story was never really theirs to begin with. It was borrowed time. But now you're no longer on borrowed time. You're standing on sacred ground. Ground you reclaimed inch by inch, through every choice to heal. Through every time you said no when it would have been easier to stay silent. Through every moment you dared to believe, I was made for more than this. And you were. You were made to lead, to love, to build, to create, to speak light into dark places, to rewrite the ending, not just for yourself, but for generations after you. The script is yours now. The chapters ahead are blank pages waiting for your truth. They won't always be easy, but they'll be real. They'll be yours. So take a breath, pick up the pen, let the old story close in peace. Let the final chapter belong to them, because the rest of the book belongs to you. And the title of this new story? I Rose Anyway. The cruel law of return, revealed. One truth. You are always the powerful one. There's a quiet moment that comes after the storm. When the narcissist is gone, the chaos settles and silence finally fills the space they once occupied. It's in that stillness that something begins to rise. Not anger, not revenge, not even relief. It's deeper than that. It's the truth, the kind that had been hidden beneath years of gaslighting, manipulation, and fear. This isn't bitterness, it's truth. The truth that was buried under their projection, their control, their lies. And when it finally emerges, it's so clear, it shakes your soul. You were always the powerful one. They knew it. That's exactly why they tried to crush you. From the very beginning, they saw something in you, something rare, radiant, and divine, a light, a presence, a soul not easily controlled. And that terrified them. You weren't just another source of supply to the narcissist. You were a mirror, one that reflected everything they hated in themselves and everything they could never be. Your strength, your intuition, your compassion, your truth. It was all too much for them. So they tried to break it. But what they didn't understand is that you weren't fragile. You were forged. What looked like weakness was actually sensitivity tuned to spiritual frequency. What they mocked as too emotional was your empathy, a superpower they could never access. And while they were busy building illusions, you were holding on to something real, something eternal, something the universe had written into your very being long before the pain began. And so, the law of return began its silent work. It didn't strike quickly, it didn't roar. It waited, watched, balanced, because universal law doesn't miss, and it doesn't play favorites. What they sowed in cruelty, they reaped in silence. Their lies returned as isolation. Their manipulation returned as exposure. Their control returned as collapse. And you? You rose. This law of return is cruel only to those who believe they are above consequence, to those who build their lives on taking from others, pretending their actions don't echo across time and space. But the law was never cruel to you. It was justice wearing stillness. It was the universe's way of whispering, "I saw everything, and I never left you." Because you were always the one, the chosen one, the difference maker in your bloodline, the pattern breaker, the one they underestimated because they thought silence meant surrender. But it didn't. Your silence was survival. It was observation. It was wisdom learning when to move and when to wait. And now you move with power. Now you speak with clarity. Now you live from truth. The narcissists collapse, whether through loss, isolation, sickness, or even death. Wasn't your doing. You didn't wish it. You didn't chase it. But it came, not as a gift, but as confirmation that the energy they tried to destroy in you was never destroyed. It was preserved, protected, and now it's activated. You're not just surviving anymore, you're thriving. And more than that, you're becoming unstoppable, the kind of unstoppable that doesn't need to prove, fight, or shout, the kind that walks into a room and shifts the energy just by being, the kind that sees straight through manipulation and no longer tolerates what once felt normal. The kind that knows peace, values solitude, and trusts inner guidance above all. Because awakening isn't just realizing the truth about them, it's realizing the truth about you, about what you carry, about what you survived, about the fact that if everything they did couldn't break you, then nothing can. You've become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you're clear, not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. And that's the final truth the law of return revealed. You were always powerful. The narcissist didn't give you strength, they revealed it. They brought it to the surface by trying to bury it. And in the end, their efforts failed, because you were never theirs to shape. You were chosen by something greater, chosen to rise, chosen to lead, chosen to remember. So now let that truth settle deep into your spirit. Let it rewrite the story they tried to tell about you. You were never too much. You were never weak. You were never broken beyond repair. You were the light they couldn't dim, the soul they couldn't own, the truth they couldn't rewrite. And now that you've awakened, you walk with purpose. You walk with vision, and most of all, you walk with power that no one can ever take from you again. Because you were always the powerful one, and now you know it. For so long, you lived under the illusion that you were weak, made to believe by the narcissist that your light was too much, your heart too soft, your dreams too naive. But the moment they fell, whether through isolation, loss, or even death, the veil was lifted. The cruel law of return didn't just bring their karma, it revealed your truth. The universe had always seen your value. That's why you were tested. That's why you were targeted. The narcissist didn't fight you because you were powerless. They fought you because they could sense your inner power before you even knew it existed. You weren't just surviving abuse, you were being refined in fire. And now, that fire didn't consume you, it awakened you. It burned away the lies. Good times. People expect grief. They expect heartbreak, but you might feel something completely different. You might feel nothing. Just stillness. Maybe even relief. And with that stillness comes a wave of confusion, and sometimes guilt. You ask yourself, why don't I feel sad? Does this make me cold? Am I heartless? But the truth is that numbness isn't wrong. It's healing. You spent years being emotionally twisted, manipulated, invalidated. Your tears were stolen long ago. Your feelings were pushed down, your voice silenced. You grieved who they were while they were still alive. You mourned the love you never received. You cried the tears of abandonment, of betrayal, of confusion, all in silence, behind closed doors. So now, when they're gone, you don't feel what others expect, you don't feel what they feel. Because your grieving happened before the ending. What you're feeling now, or not feeling, is your soul finally reclaiming space. That emptiness isn't cold, it's peace. It's what happens when your energy is no longer being drained, when the cord that held you in bondage is finally cut. You are not broken for feeling nothing. You are not cruel. You are freeing yourself from a lifetime of emotional debt. So if the tears don't come, that's okay. If the sadness feels distant, that's okay. Don't judge your healing by society's standards. This isn't about appearances, it's about truth. And your truth is that your heart is tired of grieving a person who never showed up for your soul. The numbness is not a failure to feel. It's your spirit finally resting. And in that rest is the beginning of your true peace. You're not just awake, you're becoming untouchable. There's a special kind of power that comes after awakening. A quiet, grounded strength that doesn't need to shout or prove anything. It just is. And now that you've broken free from the narcissist's grip, something in your energy has shifted forever. You're not the same person who used to doubt themselves, who over-explained, who walked on eggshells just to keep the peace. You're no longer the one who attracted emotional leeches and manipulators. Because now, you don't attract them, you expose them, you've become untouchable. Before, narcissists saw you as easy prey. Not because you were weak, but because you were kind. Your compassion, empathy, and loyalty were things they wanted to use and control. They sensed your light and tried to dim it because it reminded them of everything they could never be. But now that you've awakened, now that you've done the inner work, healed the deep wounds, and reclaimed your voice, you've become the very thing they fear. A mirror they can't handle. Your energy no longer bends for others. It stands tall. It speaks truth. And those who once could manipulate you now feel uneasy in your presence. They can't charm their way in like they used to. Their tricks don't work. Their masks fall off quickly because your light, your awareness, exposes what they really are. Not because you're trying to tear them down, but because your presence reflects what they're hiding. And here's what's even more powerful. You don't even need to fight them. You don't have to argue, defend, or convince anyone. Your vibration has risen to a place where drama, lies, and emotional chaos can't even find you. You no longer live on the same frequency. They try to enter your space, and it's like trying to breathe in a place without air. They suffocate. Not because you attack, but because they can't feed off you anymore. This untouchable version of you didn't come easy. It was earned through tears, pain, nights of questioning your worth, and years of carrying wounds you didn't deserve. But all of that prepared you. You didn't just survive. You alchemized. You turned your pain into power. You turned your silence into wisdom. And now, you walk with a kind of grace that says, I know who I am, I know what I carry, and I know what I will never accept again. This is more than confidence. It's divine protection. Narcissists and manipulators now bounce off your energy field. Not because you're cold or harsh, but because you're clear. You have boundaries, you have discernment. You can feel the energy shift the moment someone isn't aligned with truth. and your soul doesn't hesitate to walk away anymore. That's what being untouchable means. Not that you won't feel pain or face challenges, but that you won't be broken by them. Your light is no longer a flicker hidden under fear. It's a flame that guides others, burns through lies, and lights the way for those still trying to escape the darkness. And the people who once drained you, they can't stand that light now. They flinch, they run, or they're revealed for who they always were. You're not just awake. You've stepped into a power that can't be faked or stolen. You've become untouchable, not because you're above others, but because you finally remembered. You healed forward, creating a new path for future generations to walk in freedom, love, and light. This isn't just personal, it's ancestral work, it's spiritual labor, and you weren't given this path because you're weak, you were given it because your soul is stronger than the curse. The narcissist may have tried to silence you, but they couldn't stop what was already written, that you would rise, that you would break what they embodied, that through your very existence the pattern would finally collapse. Their death may bring confusion to others, but for you it brings clarity. Not because you wanted it, but because the universe knew it was time. And now that space where their energy once lived is open for something new. Peace, purpose, and the pure light of your healed lineage. You were never just a victim of a broken family. You were the healer it had been waiting for. And while others may never understand your path, your soul knows the truth. You are the one who broke the chain. You are the one who set them all free. And now, your own freedom begins. Freedom feels beautiful, like a deep breath you didn't know you were holding, finally released. But for the chosen one, freedom is never just about escape. It's about purpose. It's about calling. You didn't survive everything you went through just to go back to normal. You didn't wake up from the narcissist's trap just to stay quiet and blend in. Your awakening came with weight. Not to crush you, but to shape you into a guide, a healer, a protector of those still walking through the same darkness you escaped. When the chains broke and the fog lifted, something powerful began to stir inside of you. A quiet knowing, a voice that said, "You have work to do." That voice isn't just imagination, it's the soul remembering its assignment. You see, everything you went through, the pain, the silence, the emotional battles, wasn't just suffering, it was training. You were being prepared, carved, and refined by fire so that when your time came, you'd be able to reach back and pull others out too. You're not just free, you're chosen to lead. That doesn't mean you have to be loud or famous or perfect. It means your story matters. Your scars speak. Your wisdom is medicine. The same sensitivity they mocked in you, it's now your radar. The same tears that once weakened you, they now water the seeds of truth. You've been given the eyes to see what others can't, the heart to feel what others won't. That's not a burden, that's divine trust. So now you carry responsibility, not to fix everyone, but to be a light in the dark, to speak when others are silenced, to show there's another way. You are the proof that healing is real, that transformation is possible, that the cycle can end. Because once you've walked out of the fire, your soul carries the heat of that journey. And now, your presence alone becomes a safe place for others. This isn't the end of your story, this is the beginning of your purpose. You've been called, and the world is waiting. There's a powerful moment that comes after the storm, after the narcissist is gone, after the pain begins to settle, and the fog finally lifts. You feel lighter, clearer, freer. But deep in your spirit, something whispers, this isn't the end, this is your beginning. Because your awakening isn't just a gift, it's a calling. You're not just free to enjoy peace, you're free so you can become a guide, a voice, a light for others still trapped in the same chains you once wore. This responsibility isn't about pressure. It's about purpose. Everything you went through, the lies, the trauma, the loneliness, the inner battles, all of it was shaping you, sharpening you, preparing you to be someone who could walk through the darkest valley and come out with the strength to help others find their way. You didn't just survive, you were transformed, you were trained by the pain, and now you're ready. You're called to lead, not because you're perfect, but because you understand. You're called to speak, not because you have all the answers, but because your voice carries truth. You're called to heal, not just yourself, but to become a space where others feel seen, safe, and inspired to begin their own journey. You're called to protect, because you now recognize the signs, the traps, the energy of manipulation. And you can stand as a shield for those who haven't yet found their strength. This is what being chosen truly means. It's not about titles or pride. It's about service. It's about love. It's about using what tried to break you as fuel to build something beautiful. You are no longer just a survivor. You are a path maker, a chain breaker, a beacon in someone else's night. And this world needs you now more than ever. You may feel guilt for feeling nothing, but that's healing. When the narcissist dies, everyone around you might react in ways that seem normal. Tears, sadness, stories about the narcissist wasn't just a difficult person in your life, they were the very force that tried to cage your light, dim your dreams, and break your divine spirit. And when they left this world, they took the last piece of that spiritual contract with them. The chain shattered, the shadow lifted, and in its place came space. Space to breathe, to feel, to expand. You don't feel empty, you feel full. A strange kind of full, like something ancient in you has awakened. You see clearer, you feel deeper. You're not weighed down by their memory, you're lifted by your own truth. The silence around their name doesn't haunt you, it frees you. While others search for peace in the past, you step into the power of your present. This isn't about pretending they never hurt you. It's about realizing they no longer can. The world may seek comfort in closure, but the universe gave you something greater. Activation. A reminder that you were never meant to live in survival mode. You were meant to rise. And now, you finally are. After the narcissist died, something unexpected started happening within you. The world kept spinning. People moved on, but deep in your spirit, a quiet awakening began. You started seeing things differently, feeling things more deeply, sensing truth without needing it explained. It wasn't just healing, it was activation. Like someone turned on a switch you never knew existed. Your intuition grew louder. Suddenly you could feel energy in a room before a word was spoken. Your sensitivity, once mocked and misunderstood, became your inner compass. And your dreams? They started to shift too. They became vivid, symbolic, sometimes even prophetic. You weren't imagining it. This is your spiritual inheritance, the legacy they tried to keep you from ever discovering. You weren't just healing from trauma, you were being restored to your original power. The very things they told you were too much, your emotions, your gut feelings, your visions, were never weaknesses. They were your gifts, hidden under layers of pain. Gifts that were buried but not lost. And now, without their energy weighing you down, they're rising back to the surface. Sharper, stronger, clearer. You don't just feel different, you are different. Your soul remembers who you were before the manipulation, before the gaslighting, before the fear. You are no longer numb. You are no longer second-guessing yourself. You know what you feel. You trust what you sense. You walk with eyes wide open, not just in this world, but in the unseen one. This is your legacy as a chosen one, not just to survive what tried to destroy you, but to awaken into something greater. The power you now carry is ancient, sacred, and unstoppable. They tried to blind you, but now you see everything. You may have asked yourself many times, why me? Why was I the one born into this family, into this pain, into a cycle that felt so heavy and endless? Why did I have to carry the burden of emotional trauma, fear, and confusion, while others seem to live in peace? The answer is both heartbreaking and empowering, because you were chosen. Not chosen to suffer forever, but chosen to end what others were too afraid to face. When the narcissist in your life passed away, something deeper shifted. It wasn't just a personal event. It was a spiritual rupture in your bloodline, a toxic cycle that had repeated for generations. Through pain, control, silence, and emotional abandonment, finally met its final wall. You. You were not just the survivor of their abuse, you are the breaker, the one who said, "It ends with me." The one who stood in the storm, refused to mirror the cruelty, and held on to light even in the darkest places. Narcissistic patterns often run deep in families, hidden under the masks of tradition, culture, and silence. But behind closed doors, they create children who grow up questioning their worth, aching for love, and repeating the same wounds. You were born into that web, but you did not become it. You may have struggled, fallen, cried yourself to sleep, but you didn't become what hurt you, and that choice alone changed everything. Their death didn't just mark the end of their life. It marked the closing of a karmic contract. Through your pain, your growth, your awakening, the curse was broken. The ancestral loop of emotional abuse and spiritual suppression could no longer continue because you refused to play the same role. You chose truth over denial, healing over hiding, growth over fear. It's not easy to carry this role. Being the generational curse breaker means you feel things others avoid. You confront shadows others deny. You love harder, think deeper, and break down in private because the weight feels like too much. But with each tear, with every breakthrough, you are purifying not just yourself, but your entire bloodline. You healed backward, giving voice to the silent women and wounded children that came before you. And than ever before. That's why they tried harder. That's why it got worse before it got better, because they could sense it. You're awakening, but destiny doesn't bend to manipulation, and no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't stop what was written for you. You were born to rise, to heal, to lead, to shine, and every attempt to dim your light only made your flame stronger. Now you're beginning to see who you truly are. You're remembering your power, you're feeling your worth. And the more you step into that light, the less they can touch you, because narcissists can only control what stays in the dark. But you're done hiding, so walk in your truth. Speak with clarity. Love without fear. You were never meant to be small. You were meant to be seen, heard, and remembered. The very light they tried to destroy is the light that will now guide others home. There's something hard to explain that happens when a narcissist dies, especially the one who held power over you for years. At first, the world might expect you to mourn like everyone else. But inside, something entirely different is happening. You feel a shift, not of joy, not of revenge, but of release. Something inside you, something invisible yet heavy, finally breaks. It's like the chains around your soul, the ones you didn't even realize were still there, just fall. You feel it in your chest, in your breath, in your dreams. Their physical exit becomes your spiritual activation. You see, this wasn't just a relationship of abuse, it was a soul contract. On some level, your soul agreed to meet this darkness so that your light could remember how bright it truly is. And when the narcissist dies, that contract is fulfilled. It's done. The lesson ends. And what begins is your divine purpose, one that couldn't fully awaken while they were still pulling your strings. You spent so much time shrinking yourself, questioning your worth, trying to please someone who could never be pleased. They didn't just try to control your behavior. They tried to own your spirit. But the moment they left this world, so did the hold they had on you. The spiritual web they spun around you, made of guilt, fear, confusion, started to dissolve. Now the space they once filled becomes sacred. It becomes the place where your purpose grows, where your voice returns, where your gifts begin to unfold. You aren't just free, you're activated. Everything that was held back, your wisdom, your power, your calling, now begins to rise. This is not the end, it's the divine beginning of who you were always meant to become. The cruel law of return works in silence, but strikes with force. For a long time, it looked like they were winning. They lied, manipulated, abused, and walked away without shame. While you were left in pieces, they moved on as if nothing happened. It felt unfair. You wondered, will they ever face what they did to me? But what you didn't see, what the world didn't notice, was that the law of return was already in motion. It doesn't make noise, it doesn't warn, it doesn't rush, but it never forgets. And when it strikes, it does so with precision and power. They thought they were above consequence, untouchable, smarter than karma, stronger than justice. But no one escapes energy. What we put out always comes back. And narcissists who build their lives on taking from others eventually pay for what they stole. Not always through courtrooms or public shame, but through something deeper, something spiritual. The law of return moves through silence, but its impact is undeniable. For some, it shows up as sickness they can't explain. For others, it creeps in as loneliness, being surrounded by people, yet feeling completely alone. And for some, it arrives at the final chapter, death, not as punishment, but as return. Their fall isn't your revenge, it's universal balance. You didn't need to lift a finger. The energy they sent out came back to them. The lies, the hurt, the control, all returned, multiplied. And while their world began to crumble in silence, something inside you began to rise. Because while the law of return is cruel to the takers, it's merciful to the healers, to the givers, to the chosen ones. You didn't just survive, you stayed pure. And in the end, that's what the universe rewards, not in noise, but in truth. When the narcissist died, the world may have reacted with sympathy, sadness, even honor, posting tributes, telling stories of their good side, rewriting their legacy in softer tones. People wanted closure, they needed a clean ending, but for you, it wasn't closure you received, it was something far more powerful. You felt a soul-level shift, a silent quake within, not of joy or revenge, but of release and rebirth. While others mourned the version of them they knew, you stood quietly, feeling something they couldn't understand, the activation of your spirit. This isn't bitterness, it's truth. The